It's no longer rumor. The government is colluding directly with big tech platforms to coerce the public into what they are and are not allowed to say.
Yeah, they're not even guiding in the case of the Ukraine disclosures. There's an email where the FBI is passing along a request from the Ukrainian secret services basically saying to companies like Twitter and Google to remove or delete this material.
Hey folks, Spike Cohen here at FreedomFest Memphis, and with me is Matt Taibbi. He's a New York Times bestselling author, and you possibly know him as one of the original people behind the Twitter files drops that exposed all sorts of information about government colluding with big tech to censor all of us. Matt, thanks so much for being here.
Thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
Awesome, man. So what brought you to FreedomFest?
Well, I was invited, but I was really anxious to meet a lot of the people who I've only known through Zoom and Riverside and other programs. It's actually been really cool to meet all these people who are galvanized, especially around the free speech issue.
Absolutely, man. What's my favorite thing about Freedom Fest is we get to meet some of the greatest minds and greatest talkers and thinkers and greatest pundits and activists, people and journalists, people like you from all around the country and all around the world. Now, you just got off the main stage. Tell us about what you were talking about up there.
I was just talking about how, in addition to the overt censorship that we found in the Twitter files, and that I think a lot of people focused on, that there's an additional problem of the way the internet kind of drains the will of people to think for themselves. And I think that this is kind of an unspoken part of the equation. It's a way of preventing people from saying the bad thing before they have to be censored, and I think we need to study that more.
Well, and especially when you couple that with, we now know it's no longer theory, it's no longer rumor. The government is, or at least was, and probably certainly is now, colluding directly with, and some would argue coercing big tech platforms, and not just the US government, but governments around the world to guide, we would say, or coerce the public into what they are and are not allowed to say.
Yeah, they're not even guiding in the case of the Ukraine disclosures. I mean, the report that came out just this week by the Weaponization of Government Committee shows, and there's an email, where the FBI is passing along a request from the Ukrainian secret services, basically saying to companies like Twitter and Google, we would like you to remove or delete this material. It's not couched in the qualifiers that we saw in the Twitter files. It's direct, right? And they're outsourcing it to a foreign government, which I think is crazy.
That's the wild thing about this is, even as Americans, it's bad enough we're being censored by our own government. We're being censored by the German government, the Ukrainian government, the Australian government. This has a very chilling effect on speech around the world, because we're now at the lowest common denominator of what the worst government will allow us to say.
Right. It's sort of the inverse of like regulatory shopping, right?
Yeah.
So what's happening is whoever has the strictest interpretation of something about COVID or the Ukraine war, that's going to be the loud voice that ends up calling for material to be suppressed or de-amplified, and that's very worrisome considering how quickly they've built this global communication system.
Yeah, and so you just, we had talked just before this, you are actually having a new Twitter files drop that just happened. You want to tell us about that?
Yeah, so in the wake of the Missouri v. Biden ruling, by Judge Terry Doughty, there was a lot of criticism in mainstream press saying it's not really censorship because they're just asking, they're just helping, right? So I went back and I thought, is that true? So I looked back at Twitter files material we hadn't published and found pictures where you can see the entire transaction in one shot, where FBI asks, Twitter gets the message, Twitter deletes. That's it, right? And if you have any doubt at all that this is a sort of master canine relationship, just take a look at that one picture and you'll see it.
Yeah, it makes it very clear, and again, very, very chilling for us in this, in this democratic system. Democracy means nothing without some kind of an informed choice, and if you're being restricted in what you're allowed to see and what you're allowed to say, you don't really have an informed choice.
No, and that's why I actually worry more when they're de-amplifying or denialisting somebody than when they're taking somebody off the internet, because you don't see the effect often, right? They'll just dial down the volume on somebody's speech. And they do that constantly, and people they're not aware of how much we're being censored. That's very, very scary.
Well, it's good that you and folks like you are out there getting the message to folks to let them know that this is happening, and it's something we got to do something about. It's not theory, it's actually happening. I want to thank you very much for the
Thanks
work
very
you do.
much,
Thank you for
Appreciate
your
it.
service. And folks, this is the kind of incredible stuff that happens all the time, every single day here at Freedom Fest. We'd love for you to be a part of it. Freedom Fest Memphis. Matt, thank you again.
Thanks so much, Mike.